A decorated black female General Amara Daniels is pulled over in a small American town and handcuffed by two arrogant white officers who mock her rank and dignity, sparking outrage when her call to the Pentagon exposes their abuse. From the humiliating arrest to the explosive moment her authority is revealed, Amara's journey unfolds across tense interrogations, viral public outrage, political cover-ups, and emotional speeches that turn her personal pain into a rallying cry for justice. Each chapter builds from systemic racism and betrayal to the fiery courtroom showdown, where the officers' own body cam footage seals their downfall. With her voice echoing across the nation, Amara transforms from a silenced victim into a living symbol of resilience, proving that power without accountability crumbles, and that dignity, once reclaimed, can never again be stolen. The night air was crisp, the kind that carried silence like glass. General Amara Daniels gripped the wheel of her black sedan, shoulders tense from a 14-hour day at the Pentagon. Her stars sat tucked away in a duffel bag beside her. Tonight, she was not in uniform, only in jeans and a blazer. She was just a woman driving home. Blue and red lights flared in her rearview mirror. She sighed. Another stop. Amara pulled to the side, rolling down her window as two officers approached. Their boots crunched against the pavement with slow deliberation. "Evening, ma'am," the taller one drawled, flashlight slicing across her face. "License and registration." Amara kept her voice calm. "Of course, officer. May I ask why I was stopped?" The shorter one smirked. "Broken tail light. Dangerous out here." Amara passed him her ID. The taller one squinted. "Daniels, huh? You local?" "No, I work in D.C." The flashlight lingered on her skin before retreating. "You seem awful confident for someone pulled over," the short one muttered. She tilted her head. "I answered your question respectfully." He chuckled, glancing at his partner. "Hear that? Respectfully." The taller officer leaned in. "Step out of the vehicle." Amara's jaw tightened. "Why? Because I said so?" Her hands gripped the wheel. "With respect. Unless I'm under arrest, I don't have to leave my car." The short one sneered. "You gonna argue with us out now?" Amara exhaled slowly, unbuckling her seatbelt. As she stepped out, the taller officer circled behind her car. "Broken taillight, huh?" he said loudly, tapping the perfectly intact glass. His grin widened. "This one thinks she's smarter than us." Amara squared her shoulders. "I'm not here to argue. I'd like this handled professionally." "Professionally," the short one barked a laugh. "Lady, you don't tell us how to do our jobs." The taller one stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think you're special, don't you? With that attitude, I think I'm a citizen with rights." Amara replied evenly. That word, rights, hung in the air, like a challenge. The short officer's face hardened. "Put your hands behind your back." Amara froze. "Excuse me, you're under arrest for obstruction, talking back, refusing lawful commands." She blinked, stunned. "I did neither." The taller one snapped the cuffs out, metal glinting. "You heard him. Hands, now." Amara's breath caught as cold steel bit into her wrists. The sidewalk tilted, time slowing. She felt the weight of humiliation crush against her chest. As a general, not as an officer, but as a black woman being told she had no place to speak. The shorter cop shoved her against her own car, cheek scraping cold metal. "Welcome to our town," he muttered. The night swallowed her silence. The squad car door slammed, rattling the steel cage around her. Amara sat cuffed, wrists burning, the stale scent of vinyl and sweat thick in her nose. The short officer slid into the driver's seat, adjusting his mirror so he could watch her face, comfortable back there. Amara didn't answer. The taller one chuckled. "Guess not. Don't worry, you'll get used to it." She kept her gaze steady on the dark streets rolling past. Years of military discipline told her silence was strength. But another part of her screamed, "Speak. Don't let them own the moment." "You know what I think," the driver said. "I think you watch too much TV. Thought you could sass us like some courtroom lawyer." His partner snorted. "Or maybe she's one of those educated ones. They always think a degree makes M untouchable." Finally, Amara spoke. Her voice was low, controlled. "I complied. You escalated. That's on you." The driver snapped his head toward her. "Escalated? Lady, you're in cuffs 'cause you don't know when to shut your mouth." Her wrists shifted against the steel. "I served this country. I know exactly when to speak." The taller officer barked a laugh. "Serve? In what, the cafeteria?" Amara's jaw flexed. United States Army. The driver smirked. Yeah, what are you? A private? Maybe a sergeant. General. For a second, silence cut through the car like glass. Then both men burst out laughing. General, the driver wheezed. What, you play dress up at Halloween? Must be one of those internet generals, the taller one said. Type a few blogs, hand yourself some stars. Their laughter filled the car. Amara stared ahead, shoulders back, chin high. Inside, though something cracked, she had lectured cadets about composure under pressure, about the dignity of silence, yet here she was, reduced to a joke. Her rank stripped of meaning by men who couldn't imagine her in command. At the station, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. They yanked her out, guiding her inside with unnecessary force. The desk sergeant looked up. What's this? Obstruction, the driver said smugly. Attitude problem. The sergeant eyed Amara, then the cuffs. She doesn't look dangerous. Don't let the act fool you, the taller officer replied. Real piece of work. Thinks she runs the place. Amara's lips parted. Quiet, the driver snapped. Save it for the report. The sergeant frowned, but didn't intervene. Paperwork shuffled. Keys jingled. A pen scratched on a form. The system moved like a machine, indifferent. To truth, empty your pockets, the taller one ordered, unlocking her cuffs only to shove her toward the table. Amara rubbed her wrists, feeling the welted skin. She laid out her phone, wallet, Pentagon ID. The driver picked up the ID, squinting. Then he laughed again. Look at this, Bob. She's really going with the general act. The taller one snatched it, waving it like a prop. Yeah, sure. Next she'll say she's the president. Amara met their eyes. That ID is real. The driver leaned close, his breath sharp with coffee. Not in here. It's not in here. You're just another mouthy perp. She inhaled slowly, grounding herself. Don't give them the satisfaction. They pushed her toward the holding cell. The door clanged shut, the echo lingering like a verdict. For a long moment, Amara sat on the hard bench, staring at the peeling paint. The walls smelled of mildew and despair. She whispered to herself, barely audible, not as a soldier, not as a citizen, just black. Outside, she could hear the officers laughing again, and she stayed silent. The booking room smelled of disinfectant and stale coffee. A flickering bulb cast shadows across the chipped tiles. Stand there, the taller officer barked, pointing to a line of faded footprints painted on the floor. Amara obeyed silently, her posture straight, as if she were still at parade rest. The driver, his Namatag Reed Collins snapped on rubber gloves, hands flat on the counter. Amara set her palms down. Spread 'em wider, he sneered. Guess generals don't follow directions either. The other one, Bob laughed. She's still clinging to that story. General Daniels. Man, that's rich. Collins grabbed her left hand, pressing her fingers roughly onto the ink pad. Know what your problem is? You people think you can mouth off without consequence. Amara looked straight at him. You mean women? No, Collins said flatly. I mean your people. Her pulse thudded in her ears. You'll regret that, Bob snorted. What's she gonna do? Write a letter, please. They pressed her fingers onto the booking sheet, smearing ink across her skin. Collins held up the paper like a trophy. There, history made. First fake general in our files. Amara's voice was steady, though her chest burned. Every word you say is being recorded. Collins rolled his eyes. Boff de cam, sweetheart. We control what makes the report. Bob leaned against the wall, arms crossed. See, here's the truth. Out there, you might get away with your attitude, but in here, he pointed at the gray walls. You're nothing. No stars, no uniform, no respect. Just another angry black woman with a chip on her shoulder. For the first time, Amara smiled faintly. If I'm nothing, why are you both working so hard to break me? The question hung in the air like smoke. Collins slammed the stamp onto her paperwork. Enough, mugshot time. They shoved her toward the camera. The flash exploded, white and merciless. Bob whistled. That's a face that says, I should have kept my mouth shut. Amara tilted her chin higher. That's a face that will haunt you. Collins' smirk faltered for just a moment. Big talk for someone in cuffs. She met his stare. Discipline means holding steady under fire. You wouldn't know anything about that. Bob stepped closer, his voice a low growl. You think you're better than us? No, Amara said softly. I know I am. The silence that followed was heavier than chains. Collins shoved her back toward the holding cell. anger sharp in his movements. Let's see how proud you are after a night in there. The cell door clanged shut again. She sat on the hard bench, wrists aching, but her spine unbent. From the desk, their voices carried. She's got some mouth, Bob muttered. Don't worry, Collins replied. By morning, she'll know her place. Amara closed her eyes, breathing slowly. Her dignity was bruised, her body soared, but her resolve untouched. In the silence of the cell, she whispered to herself, I know exactly who I am, and soon, so will they. The holding cell was silent except for the buzz of a dying fluorescent bulb. Amara sat with her hands folded, breathing evenly, waiting. She'd endured worse war zones, loss, betrayal. But tonight was different. Tonight, the enemy wore badges. Collins appeared at the bars, jangling keys. Phone call. Don't take too long. Amara rose slowly, every movement deliberate. Appreciate it, she said, her tone clipped. He led her to the desk, uncuffed one wrist, and shoved the receiver into her hand. Local calls only, he warned. Amara dialed from memory. The line clicked, then a voice answered. Colonel Reyes. Her voice was calm but laced with iron. Colonel, it's General Daniels. I'm at the Fairbrook Police Department. I've been unlawfully detained. Silence, then, sharp urgency. General, are you hurt? I'm intact, she replied. But I need the secretary briefed immediately. These men think I'm bluffing. Collins smirked, leaning against the wall. Secretary, huh? Sure, maybe call the president. Next. Amara covered the receiver with her hand and looked at him coolly. Don't worry. You'll meet them soon enough. Back on the line, Colonel Reyes' tone hardened. Stay put, ma'am. I'll make the calls. Don't say another word to them. The line clicked dead. Amara placed the receiver down gently. Bob, who'd been listening from the corner, burst out laughing. You hear that, Collins? She's got her imaginary colonel on speed dial. Collins smirked. Yeah, guess we'll be seeing tanks roll up any second now. Amara didn't respond. She only adjusted the cuff around her wrist, straightened her blazer, and returned to her cell with the quiet authority of someone who knew what was coming. 20 minutes later, the phone at the desk rang. The sergeant answered lazily, then froze. Yes, sir. Yes, I understand. His face paled. General who? Yes, sir, right away. He hung up, staring at Amara's cell. Collins frowned. What's that about? The sergeant swallowed. Pentagon. They want her released. Immediately. Bob laughed. Come on, you're kidding. The phone rang again, louder this time. The sergeant answered, beads of sweat forming. Secretary of Defense's office. They're demanding to speak with the chief. Collins' smirk wavered. Wait, what? Amara's voice carried from the cell.com and steady. I told you the ID was real. Bob shook his head. No way. Chi-Chi. Can't be. The sergeant slammed his palm on the desk. She is. And you too, just handcuffed a sitting U.S. Army general. Silence spread like a contagion. Collins blinked, his face drained of color. That's impossible. As if on cue, another phone rang, then another. Lines lit up across the precinct board. The room filled with shrill demands. Every ring, another nail in their coffin. Collins muttered, This is insane. Amara stepped to the bars, her voice carrying the weight of command. What's insane is thinking you could degrade me without consequence. You thought I was nobody. But tonight, the entire Pentagon knows your names, Bob stammered. We didn't know. You didn't say. Amara's eyes blazed. I said enough. You didn't listen. The chief of police burst through the doors, face red and frantic. What the hell happened here? The sergeant shoved the paperwork at him. Sir, they booked her for obstruction. The chief scanned the file, then looked up, horrified. General Amara Daniels, 4 stars. Advisor to the Joint Chiefs, Collins, whispered, 4 stars. The chief turned on them, spittle flying. Do you idiots realize what you've done? The secretary himself is on the phone. This could end career's hell. It could end this entire department. Bob's knees seemed to buckle. We thought she was lying. The chief roared, You thought wrong. Amara stepped forward, her calm more devastating than fury. Release me, now. The chief fumbled with keys, unlocking the cell himself. General Daniels, I, on behalf of this department, I deeply apologize. Amara cut him off with a raised hand. Save it. You'll need your apology in front of cameras. The phones kept ringing. Reporters had already caught scent. Outside, headlights flashed, media vans arriving. Collins looked at her, pale and sweating. General, please. We didn't. Amara's gaze cut through him. You did. And soon, the country will see it. She walked past them, unbowed, every step reclaiming dignity they tried to steal, and behind her, their world began to collapse. By dawn, the parking lot outside Fairbrook Police Department was a sea of headlights and microphones. Reporters jostled for space, camera flashes strobing against the brick walls. Inside, the chief barked orders. Close those blinds. No statements, yet, not a word to the press. But it was too late. On the street, chants were already rising. Justice for Daniels. Justice for all. Protesters carried signs, some hastily painted, others prepared long before tonight, proof of wounds waiting to be voiced. In the holding area, Collins and Bob sat hunched, pale as paper. This is spiraling, Bob muttered, wringing his hands. Collins snapped, shut up, it's damage control, that's all. We say she resisted, it goes away. Their words carried across the room. Amara, seated at a table with her Pentagon aide beside her, lifted her head, her voice cut clean. Body cams don't lie. Collins froze. You what? The aide, a stern captain with clipped speech, leaned forward. General Daniels' arrest was fully recorded. Every insult, every shove, every second. Bob's throat bobbed. But the footage is ours. We decide what's the captain's expression was cold steel. It's already out. On social media, the video spread like wildfire. Millions watched as Amara calmly asked why she'd been stopped. Millions saw Collins sneer. You people think you can mouth off without consequence. Millions watched the moment her face hit the cold steel of her own car. The internet erupted. Justice for Daniels trended within an hour. Civil rights leaders called it a modern-day lynching of dignity. Veterans tweeted photos of themselves, in uniform, captions reading, "She fought for us. Tonight, we fight for her." Cable news anchors replayed the footage on loop, their voices trembling with outrage. Inside the station, the phones never stopped ringing. The mayor stormed in, red-faced and trembling. "What in God's name have you idiots done?" The chief stammered. "We were handling it." Handling. The mayor slammed a newspaper down. The headline blared, "Black female general handcuffed for talking back." The mayor jabbed a finger at Collins and buffed. "Do you have any idea what this looks like? Pentagon brass are calling me. State senators are demanding answers." Collins swallowed. She was disrespectful. Amara rose slowly, her presence filling the room. "I was lawful. You were not." The mayor turned, eyes widening, at her composure. "General Daniels." She cut him off. "Don't waste your apology on me. Save it for the nation you're embarrassing." Outside, the crowd swelled. Protesters held up signs. "Rank doesn't erase racism. Black excellence does not equal threat." A reporter shouted into the camera, "We are witnessing a firestorm." General Daniels, a decorated officer, was arrested for what appears to be nothing more than asserting her dignity. A chant rose, echoing against the brick walls. "Her stars don't protect her, our voices will." Back inside, the captain leaned close to Amara. "General, the Pentagon recommends a public statement. Short, controlled. They'll send legal support within the hour." Amara nodded, her gaze fixed on Collins and Bob. "They built their case on humiliation. We'll answer with truth." The mayor rubbed his temples. "General, please, if you make a statement now, it could what?" she asked sharply. "Damage your reputation." "That's already done." Minutes later, the station doors opened, and Amara stepped onto the steps. The crowd fell silent. Cameras clicked like thunder. She stood tall, no uniform, no medals, only bruised wrists and unshaken eyes. Her voice carried, steady and strong. "Last night, I was pulled over, not as a general, not as a citizen, as a black woman. And for that, alone, I was treated as less than human." The crowd erupted in shouts of anger and support. She raised her hand, quieting them. "I've served this country for 25 years. I've worn its uniform in war and in peace. But none of that mattered when these men decided my skin color outranked my stars." A hush fell, heavy and raw. "I'm not here for vengeance. I am here for truth. What happened to me happens to countless others, without cameras, without witnesses, without justice. Today, we say, no more." The chants resumed, louder, fiercer. "Justice for Daniels. Justice for all." Inside, Collins slammed his fist against the desk. She's painting us as villains, Bob whispered, shaking. Maybe we at the chief glared at them. Your careers are over, and mine might be too. Colin's voice cracked. We didn't know who she was. From outside, Amara's voice echoed through the glass. It should not take stars or rank to be treated with dignity. And with that, the world knew their names, and their downfall had only begun. The mayor's office reeked of panic. Papers littered the table, cell phones buzzed non-stop, and the blinds were drawn tight against the flashing cameras outside. The mayor leaned forward, face pale. We need a statement, something neutral. The police chief snapped, neutral. The Secretary of Defense is calling for their heads. An aide shook his head. If we admit fault, the lawsuits will bury us. The mayor slammed his fist. If we don't, the Pentagon will. Meanwhile, across town, Amara stood at a podium hastily assembled on the courthouse steps. Floodlights bathed her in white. Microphones jutted forward like bayonets. Behind her, a row of veterans and civil rights leaders stood in solidarity. The captain whispered, "Keep it brief, General. Measured, they'll twist anything too sharp." Amara's eyes swept over the sea of cameras, the crowd pressing in, faces tense with expectation. Her voice rose, calm but unflinching. "I did not come here to destroy reputations. I came here to reveal truth." The crowd stilled. 2 officers arrested me because they did not believe a black woman could wear the stars of a general. They mocked my service. They doubted my rank. They tried to strip away my dignity. She paused, the silence heavier than applause. But this story is not just mine. It belongs to every voice silenced, every dignity stolen, every life humiliated. Behind closed doors with no cameras rolling. I was lucky. I had a platform. Most do not. A reporter called out, "General, what do you want to see happen?" Amara's gaze was steady. Accountability, not only for those who handcuffed me, but for the system that trained them to see my skin before my service. Another shouted, "Do you forgive them?" She inhaled slowly. Forgiveness belongs to the heart. Accountability belongs to justice. The crowd erupted in cheers. Signs lifted higher. Her voice is ours. Dignity has no color. Back in the mayor's office, the television blared her speech. Collins and Bob sat on a bench, eyes glued to the screen. Bob muttered, "She's killing us out there." Collins shook his head violently. "She's lying. She twisted it. We just followed protocol." The police chief snapped. "Protocol doesn't include racial slurs caught on body cam." The mayor turned on them. "Do you realize what's happening? She's putting this entire town on trial. Every old stop, every buried complaint, it's all coming back." Colin's voice cracked. "We didn't know." The chief's voice thundered. "You didn't care." Outside, the press conference grew more fiery. A young reporter asked, "General Daniels, what message do you want to give to young people of color watching tonight?" Amara's eyes softened, but her tone was steel. "That your worth is not defined by someone else's fear. That excellence will always be questioned, but never diminished. And that silence is not the answer. Dignity is not granted, it is demanded." The words hit like drumbeats. The crowd cheered, some with tears streaking their faces. Veterans behind her raised their fists in salute. One elderly black sergeant whispered hoarsely, "That's my general." The mayor's office vibrated with ringing phones. A legal advisor whispered urgently, "Civil rights attorneys are lining up. They smell blood." The mayor collapsed into his chair. "So what now? Resign? Sacrifice the department?" The police chief, sweating, muttered, "We'll have to offer them up, Collins and Bob, maybe more." Collins shot to his feet. "You can't. We were just doing our jobs." The chief rounded on him. Your jobs have just made us the symbol of everything rotten in American policing." Bob's voice shook. She was calm the whole time. We mocked her, on tape." Collins grabbed his arm. "Shut up." But the confession hung heavy in the room. Later that night, Amara sat in a quiet hotel room, exhausted. The captain placed a cup of coffee beside her. "You've turned this into a national reckoning. Tomorrow, there'll be hearings. Congress wants statements. Civil rights leaders are calling it historic." Amara stared out the window at the glowing city. "I didn't ask for history. I asked to be treated as human." The captain nodded solemnly. "Sometimes history doesn't ask permission." Amara closed her eyes briefly. The memory of cold cuffs biting into her wrists flashing back. She whispered, then let history remember their arrogance and our refusal to bow. On television, her speech replayed across every network. Anchors dissected every phrase, every expression. One commentator said, "This is more than one arrest. This is a mirror held up to America." And for the first time that night, Collins and Bob realized the mirror showed their faces. The Department of Justice seal flashed across television screens nationwide. A solemn spokesperson declared, "The Civil Rights Division has opened a formal investigation into the Fairbrook Police Department, citing patterns of racial profiling and misconduct." The words landed like thunder. At the precinct, whispers swirled like smoke. Officers leaned over desks, eyes darting. Old complaints, once ignored, resurfaced. "I filed against Collins last year," one officer murmured, said he roughed up a teenager. Another muttered, "Bob falsified a report in 21. Everyone knew. Nobody cared." Now, everyone cared. In the interrogation room, Collins slammed his fists on the table. "They're making us scapegoats." Bob hunched in the corner, wringing his hands. "Maybe we are," Collins snapped. "Don't you dare turn on me." Bob's eyes flicked up red. "I've got a family, man. They're saying prison time. You think I'll sink with you?" The door creaked open. Two federal investigators stepped in, suits sharp, expressions sharper. "Gentlemen," one said, sliding a recorder onto the table, "will make this simple. Either cooperate, or we build the case without you. And trust me, you want to be on the right side of this." Collins scoffed. "We were following protocol." The investigator pressed play. Collins' own voice filled the room. "You people think you can mouth off without consequence." Collins paled. The investigator's tone was cold. "That's not protocol. That's prejudice." Bob swallowed hard. I tried to stop him." Collins whipped toward him. "You liar. You laughed with me." The investigator raised a hand. "Plenty of time for both of you to tell your stories, under oath." Across town, Amara sat with her legal team. A junior lawyer spread folders across the table. "General, complaints are pouring in. People who never spoke out before are finding courage. Your case opened the floodgates." Amara nodded slowly. "It was never just about me." The lawyer leaned forward. "Collins and Bob aren't the first. But if we win, they'll be the last in this town." Back at the precinct, the chief stormed into his office, slamming the door. Collins and Bob stood awkwardly before his desk. The chief's voice was low and venomous. "Do you realize what you've done to us?" "To me?" Collins stammered. We can spin it." "Say she was aggressive." "Spin." The chief flung a folder across the desk. "Body cam footage has you mocking her rank. The DOJ has hours of tape. You think spin saves you now," Bob whispered. "So, what happens to us?" The chief's glare could have burned steel. "What happens? You're done. Stripped of badges, facing charges. And if you think anyone here is protecting you, you're a bigger fool than I thought." Collins' shoulders sagged. The bravado drained. Bob's whisper cracked into a sob. "God help us." That night, Amara watched the news. A panel of commentators dissected the unraveling. One said, "The irony is undeniable. They told her she was nothing. Now, their every word is immortalized as evidence." Amara turned off the television, sinking into silence. The captain, seated nearby, asked softly, "How do you feel, General?" Amara stared at the dark screen, her reflection staring back. "Vindicated. No, these men will fall, but the system that bred them still stands." She rose, her voice quiet but firm. "That's what will break next." Meanwhile, in his empty kitchen, Collins sat alone, the echo of chants still ringing in his ears. Justice for Daniels. Justice for all. For the first time in his career, he realized no badge could shield him now. The courthouse stood like a fortress, its stone pillars bathed in morning light. Crowds gathered outside, chanting, waving signs, their voices echoing off the walls. Reporters clustered at the steps, microphones extended like spears. Inside, the air was electric. Rows of wooden benches creaked under the weight of spectators, activists, and veterans in uniform. At the front sat Amara Daniels, flanked by her legal team. Calm, unyielding. At the opposite table, Collins and Bob slumped beside their lawyers, sweat beading at their temples. The once brash officers now looked small, diminished. The judge entered, gavel striking. "This court is now in session." The prosecutor rose first, voice measured but sharp. "Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, today we present a simple case. abuse of authority, fueled by prejudice. The defendants mocked, belittled, and unlawfully detained a decorated general of the United States Army because they could not see past her skin color. He pressed play on the evidence, the courtroom filled with the crackle of body cam audio. Collins' voice rang out, "Don't care who you say you are. Out here, you're nothing." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Amara's face remained stone. The prosecutor paused. "That is not law enforcement. That is degradation." Collins' lawyer tried to salvage him. He stood, voice shaky. "My client was under stress. Protocol is messy. It was a misunderstanding." The prosecutor's rebuttal was ice cold. "A misunderstanding does not laugh at rank. A misunderstanding does not mock a woman's service." This was not stress, was contempt. Then came Amara's turn on the stand. She rose, shoulders squared, medals gleaming under the lights. The oath was spoken. She sat, eyes forward. The prosecutor asked softly, "General Daniels, can you tell us what you felt that night?" Her voice was calm, steady, but every word cut deep. "I felt the cold steel of handcuffs before they saw the steel on my shoulders. I felt laughter where there should have been respect. I felt the weight of every soldier who ever served under me, dishonored in that moment. And I felt what millions feel every day, that my skin erased my service." The courtroom was silent, some dabbing tears. Even the judge's stern gaze softened. The defense attempted to rattle her. "General, isn't it true, you raised your voice to the officers?" Amara's eyes narrowed. "I raised my voice to demand recognition of my rank. If truth sounds sharp, it is because lies dull ears. General, could it be the officers simply did not believe you?" She leaned forward, voice steel. "They believed enough to laugh. They believed enough to mock. Disbelief is not a defense for dehumanization." The lawyer faltered, papers trembling. Outside, the crowd erupted as word spread through reporters' live tweets. "She's dismantling them, line by line." Finally, closing arguments came. The prosecutor thundered, "This is bigger than two men. This is about the uniform we trust, tarnished by arrogance. If we excuse this, we excuse every injustice hiding in the shadows. But if we hold them accountable, we send a message. Rank deserves respect, service deserves honor, humanity deserves dignity no matter the skin it wears." The defense muttered tired pleas for leniency. Few listened. The judge delivered the verdict. "Officers Collins and Bob, this court finds you guilty of unlawful detention, abuse of power, and violation of civil rights." The gavel fell like thunder. The gallery exploded in cheers. Some wept, openly. Veterans saluted. Amara closed her eyes briefly, not in triumph, but in release. Outside the courthouse, the steps became a stage once more. Reporters surged forward. "General Daniels, how do you feel about the verdict?" Amara's gaze swept the sea of faces. This was never about vengeance. This was about dignity. Today's verdict reminds us that power without accountability corrodes justice. Let this be the beginning of repair, not just the end of a trial. The chants grew louder. Justice for Daniels, justice for all. Collins and Bob were escorted out the back, handcuffed, their faces hollow. Reporters caught glimpses of their bowed heads in poetic symmetry. The cuffs now bit their wrists, the same steel they had so easily wielded against her later that night. Amara sat in her hotel room. Lights dimmed, exhaustion heavy. The captain knocked gently, stepping inside. "You did it, General. They're finished." Amara shook her head slowly. "No, we only opened the door. The march through it belongs to everyone who refuses to be silenced." She looked out at the city skyline, the chants still faintly audible from below. Her voice was quiet but resolute. "They tried to erase me with laughter. Now their downfall will echo louder than their mockery ever did." And somewhere, in the quiet corridors of the Pentagon, officials spoke her name with reverence, not just as a general, but as a woman who turned humiliation into history. The city breathed differently in the days after the verdict. The chants that had once rattled courthouse walls still hummed in the streets, but now with triumph instead of rage. Posters of Amara's face uniform, sharp gaze, unyielding, in windows and storefronts. Children walked past, pointing, whispering, "That's her, that's the general." Amara Daniels could hardly leave her hotel without being stopped. Strangers pressed hands into hers, thanking her for standing for all of us. Veterans saluted her in grocery stores. Mothers told her their sons now believed dignity was worth fighting for. And yet, when the cameras dimmed and the crowds dispersed, she sat alone, in the quiet, staring at her own reflection, wondering what had truly changed. One evening, she walked through Fairbrook in plain clothes, cap pulled low. A small memorial had sprung up outside the police station, candles, flowers, handwritten notes, for those humiliated, for those silenced, for those not believed. She stopped, hand brushing over a folded letter. A young woman approached, eyes hesitant. General Daniels. Amara nodded gently. The woman's voice wavered. My brother. He was arrested here last year. No one listened when I said it was wrong. But after you, people finally listened. Tears filled her eyes. Thank you. Amara placed a hand on her shoulder. Don't thank me. Thank your courage. My story was only a spark. Yours is the flame. The woman nodded, shoulders trembling. In Washington, the Pentagon held a ceremony in her honor. Not to give her new medals, she already had plenty, but to acknowledge something greater. The Secretary of Defense stood at the podium, voice steady. General Daniels reminded us that the stars on her shoulder are not ornaments. They are promises. And when those promises are disrespected, it is the duty of this nation to rise with her. Applause thundered. Amara accepted no new honor, only bowed her head, letting the weight of those words settle. Collins and Bob sat miles away, behind bars, their badges stripped, futures erased. For them, the world had shrunk to steel bars and stale air. They spoke little now, their voices broken, their arrogance gone. One evening, Bob muttered in the dark, "Do you think she'll ever forgive us?" Collins stared at the wall, hollow-eyed. She doesn't need to. She won. Back home, Amara finally returned to her unit. The soldiers greeted her with a roar of cheers, their respect palpable. Welcome back, General. She smiled, but her tone was firm. I didn't fight this battle for me alone. I fought it for every one of you, for the dignity of every soldier who wears this uniform, no matter their color, gender, or origin. The soldiers raised their fists in unison. The sound echoed like a vow. Later, she sat with her captain under the night sky. Stars stretched endlessly overhead. Funny, the captain said. Those men tried to strip away your stars, and now, you shine brighter than ever. Amara's gaze lifted to the constellations. Stars don't belong to men. They belong to the sky. They only fall when forgotten. The captain studied her quietly. And yours? Her lips curved into a faint, resolute smile. Mine will not be forgotten. Weeks later, she received a letter, not from the Pentagon, not from lawyers, but from a 10-year-old boy in Fairbrook. The handwriting was shaky, the words uneven. Dear General Daniels, I saw you on TV. My teacher said you are brave. When I grow up, I want to be brave too. Thank you for showing me. Amara held the letter for a long time, her chest tight, eyes wet. That single letter meant more than any verdict, any ceremony. It was proof that humiliation had been transformed into hope. And so, the story that began with cold steel on her wrists ended with something far more enduring, a legacy written not in shame, but in strength. The handcuffs that once mocked her had become symbols of justice. The laughter that once belittled her had become echoes of downfall, and the woman they tried to erase became the name. Children whispered with pride, Amara Daniels, General, survivor, witness, catalyst, not broken, not silenced, never forgotten.